Hey everybody, hope you're doing good. So I am working on trimming my tomatoes, so I figured that I would show you how I've got these strung up and also how I trim them and why you should. So the method that I chose to go with this year is the Florida weave. So I have not trimmed these yet, but as we go down the line, you'll see that I've trimmed them up a little bit more. So with the weave method, it is actually really easy. If you can have a second person kind of help and hold up your tomatoes if they're a little bit larger, it is really helpful. So all I did was I just tied this off to this back here, and then I just went over and under and over and under, or in front and behind, whatever, all the way down. And then I tied it off to that end pole, and then we just did the opposite, all the way back down, and then back again. So as these get taller, we will continue adding string, but that was sufficient for now. If you'd like, you can also go ahead and keep weaving it up and just weave the tomatoes through there as they get taller, but I'm just going to do it as needed. Now it is kind of leaning back a little bit, but that's okay. I may come back and do another support pole in the middle here, and I think that that'll look a lot better, but it's actually holding it up just fine. And if it does lean back, it's going to go right to this chicken wire, so that's not a big deal. So this is a section of untrimmed tomato plants. And as you can see, it's starting to look pretty bushy down at the bottom there. So the goal when you're trimming your tomato plants, so the first part is to get all of this lower foliage off, because that can actually allow bugs and stuff to crawl up onto your plant. So if you just go ahead and cut the bottom parts off, it's going to help with pest prevention. And then another benefit to trimming your plants, and this kind of goes more so up the plant, is you want to remove the suckers. So this is a sucker from your tomato plant. This is the part that's going to grow out from the top of the branch. That's a very small one. And then as you go up, so here's a larger one. You can see it's grown out a lot more. Now, as this plant grows, the sucker is going to get much larger, and it's going to be a lot harder to tell these apart. So it's easier if you cut the sucker off when they are younger. Now, the reason that you want to do that is because if you cut off the suckers, which are going to branch off and actually put out more flowers, which in one case might be good if you have a determinate variety, which only puts out a certain amount of flowers. But on the other hand, that is not good because it is going to take away energy from the main stem here. So if you trim the suckers off, it's going to allow more energy to go to the flowers and what leaves are already here, and that will allow it to produce bigger fruit. So instead of a bunch of half-produced smaller fruit all over by the end of the season, you're going to have bigger fruits with better production. So now I'll just show you how I trim my plants. So first off, we're just going to cut everything off of the bottom. So we've got a branch and a sucker. We're going to cut both of those off, even the smaller ones. And something that I forgot to mention is you can actually take the suckers off once they are the taller size, like this. You'd want it to be at least this size, maybe a couple of inches bigger, but not much bigger than that. And you can stick it in a cup of water and root it, and you'll have a clone of your tomato plant. And then whenever it roots, you can just go ahead and stick that into the ground and have a second planting of tomatoes. Okay, so now back to trimming. Now, as I'm trimming up the stem here, I'm just trimming off the leaves that are touching the ground. So really probably the first 1.5 to 2 feet, I'm cutting the branches off. And now we're going to do the same to this one. So you can see the difference in that, and it actually takes a lot of weight off of your trellis system too, if you're worried about that. So now that you've got your stems trimmed up about 1.5 to 2 feet, now what you want to do is go up the vine and trim off all of the suckers that you can discern which are which. And again, you can keep those suckers and root them if you want more tomato plants, otherwise just compost them. And then if you're not sure if it's a sucker or if it's the main vine once you get up top, just leave it. It's not a big deal. Now you can expect to have to do this, I would say come through at least every week or two and check and see how these are looking, because especially if it's raining a lot, your tomato plants can take over. And then if you don't have them trimmed, it's going to promote a lot more blight and disease and things that you do not want on your tomatoes. So it's just best to stay ahead of the game, and when you're coming out and doing your garden walks and checking on everything, just carry a pair of clippers with you. And if you notice some suckers, just cut them off of there. That's good. I'll just put this branch above the stream. And then once you get up to a point where it's putting out flowers, that's the point where it is recommended to go ahead and stop trimming the suckers. And that's kind of on par because the flowers seem to be near the top of the plants, at least right now. So I've got all of the suckers trimmed off up until this flower cluster, and then at that point it does become actually pretty hard to tell what's what. So I would stick to that advice. It does follow true. So it's a lot cleaner through here with all of the tomatoes staked up and trimmed. You can actually tell what's what. Got a little volunteer ground cherry here that's getting eat up by something. And then I know that I've been questioning these, but I came down here and it looks like these are some kind of squash. By the shape of it, maybe a butternut squash, who knows? Only time will tell. So on a little side note here with the tomato plants, I definitely did find that putting the egg in with the tomato plants did kind of help with a little boost of fertilizer, I would say. These things have been growing strong, but on that same note, we have been getting rain consistently, and that's very important with your garden plants is consistent rain because it will stress them out if they're not getting enough water, of course. So I'm really happy with how this turned out. We've got our tomato plants all trimmed and staked up and ready to go for this season. So I do actually have some tomatoes that are just kind of growing about randomly that I'm not going to be doing anything to. So we can kind of run that as an experiment, and I'll be able to show you all the differences in trimming your tomatoes and just letting them go and do whatever they want. A lot of that does kind of depend on the variety as well. So if you have something like a cherry tomato versus like a big beefsteak tomato, yeah, like you can just try it and stop a cherry tomato from growing. It's going to be very productive most of the time. I've never had an issue with that, only volunteers popping up everywhere. That's the biggest issue. But as for the beefsteak tomatoes or larger slicing tomatoes, they take a lot more time and energy, and a lot could happen between the time that it starts producing the fruit and the time that it's ripe on the plant as well. So there's a little bit more care that goes into larger tomatoes, I feel. Let me know if you feel the same. But thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you have a great day and that this was a little bit helpful to you. Bye.